Great. Right, roll call. Panos, Carl, Mohammed, Marku, Lisa, Zita, Martin, Rohan. Hey, Rohan. Marius, Juan, Amit. Awesome. Flavia. This session's being recorded, so you can come back to it later. And the board that we're going to use is going to be available for the next 4 weeks or so. So I am based in Southampton today. We've got 2 studios. I'll talk a bit more about me in a few minutes. And it being on the half hour, I will make a start. I've just got one Q&A. Oh, Rajesh, I sent a reply to your message. I hope you got that. Cool. Okay. Wow. This was the biggest subscribed webinar we've ever done. And being a remote chapter, it is just super useful. And it was all done organically. So thank you so much for coming and sharing. And I hope you get a lot from today. Today, we're going to talk about customer journey mapping. I'm going to introduce the session with an icebreaker. Then I'm going to kind of set the scene about what the remote Google Design chapter is all about, how it's a part of a global chapter group. And then I'm going to do a deep dive on customer journey maps, and we're going to do one together. So you're going to leave our session having done a customer journey map, whether it's your first or it's a bit of a revision, and I'll set a scenario. And then I've got some further reading links so you can kind of find out a bit more. This topic, I don't think can ever be very succinctly shared. I think there's a lot out there covering this. It is such a useful tool, and it really helps align the team. It helps gather people together, and it helps get to a point of understanding and finding next steps. And then we'll finish with Q&A. So if you have any questions, I'll show you what to do. So let's get into it. I am finding the link. We're using a tool called Mural today. And yeah, that's super good. And I am putting that link in the chat for everyone. You can go over there and you can start seeing the board. What I'm probably going to do, yeah, you're all flying in there. That's great. What I'm probably going to do is start hiding some things. Yeah, I'm going to do that. Great. I'll screen share this as well so you all know what we're doing. Okay, so let me screen share. It's the first one of the year, so just getting to it. Great. Okay, so this is what my screen looks like. And we're going to start with an icebreaker. So for the next 10 minutes, can you write down what distractions prevent you from doing your best work? So you can take one of these, you can double click, and it will create one as well, and just start writing. I'll set a timer for 10 minutes, and then I may invite some people to share some of what prevents them from doing their best work. We're at the start of a brand new year, and I think everything is about problem solving. So if you could start thinking about what distractions prevent you from doing your best work and just write them down. Maybe it's you're unclear as to how to get started. It's too big. You need to break it down. It's too many people in your open plan office, that kind of thing. Amazing. God, it's great to have so many people on it today. All right. Let me just check we're all okay in the chat. Yeah, great. going to hide that for now. So a few more minutes. I think 8 was probably a bit too many. The best browser to use is Chrome on a form of a computer. If you want to just double click and you'll create a post-it. There's also, I'll give you a bit of a deep dive on Mural. Mural has a drawer on this side. You can drag out post-it notes as well. So that's super useful. I'm going to reduce the time. I think 8 minutes was probably a little too much. And I'm going to add just 2 more minutes. There we go. Great. Wow, so many. Right, so the next section, we're going to start talking about some of these. So if you would like to share what you've written, I would love you to say in the chat that you'd like to share, and then I'll unmute you and you can talk about it. It sounds kind of like a radio call-in show, but it's kind of fun too. So let's drag some of this in. Actually, no, you can use the whole space. That's great. So many. Great. Right, this is it's going to be a great challenge. I have 50 people and I have to unmute one of you. This is great. All right, Georgia, you can share. Cool. I'll unmute you in a minute. If anyone can't add any text, you simply just double click and then just start typing. If that's a bit tricky, you can just write in the chat and we can share that too. So again, use the link in the chat to see the screen share. Great. Okay, so I am going to unmute Georgia. This is going to be good.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hey, Georgia, how are you?
Hi, thanks very much for this. I'm very excited to learn and get involved in it. There's just 2 things that I put down. I can see lots of people have got quite like tactical, specific things on the day-to-day, but for me, the ones I had were keeping an eye on upcoming work on the horizon, kind of at the same time as delivering. So making sure that I'm not sort of letting any balls drop whilst also delivering the work, and also on a similar thread, having to educate my stakeholders at the same time as delivering the work as well.
Great, yeah. What kind of situation are you in? Are you in a product company? Are you in a large organization? What kind of environment are you in?
Yeah, it is a large company, just under 1,000 people, and I work from home, so everyone is remote.
Yep.
It's quite a new company. There are lots of product teams within the company, so it's making sure that everyone gets what they need, and also helping educate people on my discipline, design research, so that they understand what they're going to get and why they should do it as well.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you, Georgia. That is really, really awesome. Right. Anyone else want to share? Let me see who we've got. Let's read a few. So, problem hasn't been clearly defined. That's always a good starting point. Plugging gaps in team capacity, no priority. Everything is urgent and has top priority. That is so true of me 3 years ago. Everything is important and good backlog management and good scoping will help demystify that, but totally acknowledge often everything's important, but the truth is none of it is. So yeah, that's great. Scoping out the work, client shifting goals. That's a really impressive area. Too many tasks on plate. So yeah, it looks like a lot of our people are overwhelmed, and that's distracting. Long working hours, noise levels in the office. I'm guessing it might be an open plan office, which is deemed to be the biggest management mistake of the 21st century. Too many directions I can go. Is that to do with purpose? That's quite interesting. Lack of focus. Lack of focus can sometimes be, from my point of view, is that you're just not engaged in the work. You're not doing the best work of your life. It's not playing to your strengths. Maybe that's an issue. Unclear objectives, no deadlines. That's, yeah, fake deadlines are really, really useful, especially if someone else imposes it on you, because then it feels like a real one. Great. So happy with all of these. What you can do, you could just run one of these sessions where you are using a tool like Mural, or you can use it on just a clean surface. And do you know what? You can have no agenda. You can just start with this and then reframe a top priority, voted ones as how might we ease, and then you can move to solutions. The lightning decision jam or the note and vote helps do that. And so you're always proactively getting better. So awesome. This is really good. What else have we got? Yeah. Client shifting goals. Yeah, we did that one. Email. Yes. One of the biggest tips I ever got was check email at lunchtime and about 4 o'clock. You don't actually have to be with email in front of you clicking refresh. Most of the time I set mine to offline because I need to see the calendar, because that's what I work from. But you don't need to be on the pulse. You just don't. I think it comes through poor learning. We weren't taught at school how to manage this correctly. Even our children now are going through school. They're learning how to use email, but not how to manage it. So it's still something that needs rounding out and needs sharing to get the most out of your time. Time can be designed. This is the whole area that I love. So great, thank you so much. You can continue adding to those, you can share these, you can do something with them, create how might we's. But I'm going to move on and talk about what this chapter is all about and what the opportunity here is to do. So this is a remote sprint chapter. I believe it's the only one from the Google set of experts. And what's the mission of the global sprint chapters is to extend the practice of design sprints and using them and making people aware of them, helping facilitators and supporting them, building awareness and highlighting some of the opportunities, but also sharing resources and connecting people. The opportunity here was to have a wider range of people to help and get to know each other. A lot of companies are remote, or we're doing distributed teams, and I find that I myself have very little time to travel to conferences or events or meetups, and this is probably the most useful and valuable way that I can help people, but also this is a learning loop for me. It gives me an opportunity to learn more about everyone else. So the sprint chapter is run by myself as an individual. My name is Ross Chapman. I am an experienced design consultant. I've run over 50 design sprints in the last 2 years, and I've been to the last 2 Google Sprint conferences, and the last one I actually shared some of what I've learned in terms of using remote design sprints, but also how to counter burnout as a facilitator running multiple sprints over the course of a year. How can you manage yourself, but also make sure that the outcomes are as great as they can be and not burn out at the same time. So what this is all about is enabling a community to grow. And the way that I've designed these sessions is that, to start with, I'm leading them, I'm sharing something that I think is useful to the community. Over time, I can see more people getting involved and it being a useful way to share and create community. So that's what it is. So let's get into it. Let's do what we set out to do and learn a bit more about the customer journey map. One of the reasons I wanted to cover this was I find it to be just the most useful tool in a workshop's arsenal. I find it to be a way to understand the current situation or to start designing a experience. And it's done in the abstract, but it is a way to get the team aligned. And essentially, it's a visual representation of the experience your customers have with you. I like the Don Norman definition of user experience. It is the complete journey that a user has interacting with your business or interacting with the problem space. So it's not just going on a website, looking at a product and buying it. It is all the way back to, I've found I need something, I have a problem, I need to solve it. I'm looking at different ways to solve that problem. I learn about this, I'm starting to use it, all the way to, and if it was a product, unboxing it, opening it, starting to use it, finding problems with it, contacting support or getting help for it, and all the way to the other end, maybe replacing that solution with another one. So it's the full experience that a user has with your business, products, services, and it is the entire experience. UX isn't just using websites and getting some outcome from it. It's called a few things. I generally just call it mapping. Some people call it a customer journey map. Some people call it a user journey map. That's what Google uses within the design sprint kit. I just generally call it mapping because you can have many different fidelities and extendabilities around it. I've included a few examples that we've used within sprints. So we use the kind of, who are the actors? There's a discovery phase, there's a learning phase, there's a using phase, all the way to what was the user goal. There's another example here where we did a training workshop. And again, very similar, starting with those actors or players, discover, learn, using, and goal. If you have any questions, by the way, just hit them in the Zoom and I'll answer them as we go. That is a great way to start and use maps with a group, especially when they're being introduced to design thinking and using tools other than just having a meeting and talking about the problem space. It can be further extended, and there's a further reading segment that I'll show later on, where it can get more detailed. And I would encourage you, when you are building customer journey maps, to build them as a team. One individual should not do it. All of what we're sharing within the sprint is team activity. It is not for the UX designers to just go away and do and share in a week's time because you haven't done it together. And part of reducing the dependency on having meetings is that a meeting is there to inform people of what has been done. But if you've done it all together, you don't need to inform. and you're using the strength of the team. Every person has a different point of view, a different experience level, different expertise, and that's what we want to capitalize on. So this particular example, I just got off Google, shows customer activities, their goals, their touch points, how they're touching or interacting with the problem space and the business, going to their experience. And you can do customer happiness. If you look at the wave line by, I think it's Nathan Shedroff, he maps it as a line, and when a customer is happy, it goes up, and when a customer is unhappy, it goes down. Then other points are the business goal, which KPIs you can measure at each stage. How are we doing? Organizational activities, what happens in the back end, what happens with the team as a customer is going through this, and who's responsible. So you can double click on this, it goes to a Medium article, and you can learn more about it. Essentially, the reason to map is to get away from the ambiguity of how our business works, what happens where, how do people help customers, and it is a pure human-centered design process. What we're doing is we're doing it from the customer's point of view or the user's point of view. We're not dictating where we want to put things. You can use maps to kind of map out a timeline, I guess, for an internal activity. But for a customer journey map, you are putting together what a customer typically would do. And I'll follow on with 2 points. You can get wrapped around edge cases. Edge cases are, but what if a customer did this? Or what if they needed this other thing? I would start with the kind of general, 60% of what commonly customers would do, and work on the main focus. Edge cases can come later. You can totally just zoom in on edge cases. It's another player within your map. But to start with what's the most basic, what's the thing that most people are doing. The second point is that most of this will start with assumption. You are guessing. Yes, you can use the word guess. You are guessing what this user experience is. And there's a couple of points on that. The conversation between a business and a customer often starts with the business. The reason for that is the business exists to turn a profit and make a customer. But to start this activity, you're starting from a business point of view and you're looking to learn. So starting with a business assumption, how do we think users navigate this problem space, not just our particular business, but this problem space? And then your business will appear in there somewhere, hopefully. The map can actually help illuminate some of the areas that maybe your proposition is completely different to the job that customers are trying to do. So it helps to discover more about the problems and expose some of the failings that may be within your particular framework of providing value to customers. Please ask any questions. I know that it's pretty heavy hitting. And I'm trying just to introduce you to the customer journey map. I'm not trying to give you everything within an hour. So it helps businesses step into their customers' shoes and see the business from customers' perspective. For new teams looking at this, it can be very, very different. It can be completely alien. I know some teams aren't the customer of the business that they work in. So it requires a bit of a leap to try and think how a particular, I don't know, you're looking for this one widget because you do this specialist job and you need to discover how that happens and where you can buy it from and who can give you the support, and what if it comes and it's the wrong one? How do you return it? So I typically use these within product and service design, but you can use it with any full-length user experience of any industry at all. So it helps reveal issues, and especially if you level it down to the responsibility or which team helps which part, it can expose some of the problems with a siloed way of working. It may be that there's a gap between this team interacting with the customer and then this team straight after. And this is where you can start uncovering some issues. So any questions, please let me know. So that's why you should map. It's a fantastic tool to bring the team together, just like personas can sometimes be useful for the team to understand who the customer is. You can then take those typical customers and to put into a map. I only use personas to align the internal team. I rarely design against them because a persona is a categorization. It's a caricature of a customer. But it can be a very useful tool for the team to understand a bit more about what their motivations are, what they're trying to do. And especially when you're looking at validating this with a user test later on, maybe in your design sprint, then those users recruited can match and everything works out. So let's move on to an activity. So I'm just going to uncover this. So, and here's Don here. So in his exact words, user experience encompasses all aspects of the end user's interaction with the company, its services and its products. It's the whole thing. And to be honest, the company is probably going to be in a very small segment, but it could be extended to the whole thing. So let's do an activity. I'm going to put 15 minutes on. And I want us to start with a scenario, and taking that Don used to work for Apple, I thought we would start with the Apple AirPods. If you were looking for a earphone solution for your iPhone, you would likely look at what's supported, and that may lead you to the Apple AirPods. So let's start. I'll kind of lead the start of it, and then I'll invite everyone to kind of take part, and we'll start stringing this all together. This should be interesting. I've never done this with 50 people. Right. So we always start, I'm going to put some time on, 15 minutes, should do it. And then we've got further reading and questions at the end. Maybe you could call in on. So we always start with the goal. What is the end goal? But to do that, we need to start with the player. So who is this? So we might say a iPhone customer, maybe a current iPhone customer with a old-ish, well, an old phone. Their goal is to enjoy listening. And this is a user goal. It's not what we want to achieve, it's what the user wants to achieve. So enjoy listening to music, let's say on the go. Okay, so the challenge now is to map the bits in between. And we usually have these kind of columns just to set the tone of discover, learning, and using. Oh, Jules asked a question. Jules says, how often do you need to update journey maps, or is it needed at all? A fantastic question. Thank you, Jules. Like some tools, I would say a map is something that you should have all the time and update. Just like you would have a strategy, just like you would have a backlog, just like you would have personas if you use them, just like you would have a number of tools. I think once you have a tool to work from and keep it up to date, then you've got a fantastic tool. If you don't have this tool to guide a conversation, it can go very wrong very fast. So you can pull this up within a team conversation and say, okay, we're talking about this problem. Where is that problem? Oh, it's in this phase. Okay, who has a problem with this? Oh, it's this player. What do we know about this? So we can start answering some of those questions. So I would keep it as a tool, and that can be updated, that can be shared, and can be changed over time. The other question was, is the recording available after this? Yes, it is. But please ask me any questions. I want to give as much value as possible. So let's start filling this out. So I'm going to invite you all to start filling this out. What you can do is bring up the Apple website and start getting an understanding about it, probably around the learning area, towards learning and using. But I would imagine you would start discovery with understanding what your options are, maybe finding out what that iPhone is capable of using, asking friends for advice. There's a lot of options here. The advice that I give teams that I work with is don't make it a shopping list. So when we're talking about a particular product, they'll list in the discover phase all the ways that anyone could discover everything that they do. Again, I would typically focus on the main areas and try and focus on those and treat the rest as edge cases. I would also, you can add arrows here. It is vital to have arrows between these bits so that it doesn't look like a shopping list. The reason being is that you can see the journey and link it all up. Like any form of documentation, and yes, this is a documentation method, you want anyone to look at this and start to understand it. You shouldn't need a degree to work this out. Cool. Jack, I'm just sharing the link again. Here we go. Great. So let's see where we're at the moment. So read reviews on the website. Yes, you could go to, I don't know, 9to5Mac, or you could Google, maybe Google search needs to be there. Getting a recommendation from a friend, that is a great start. You might work with other people and see what they're using and be interested. You might say, are they any good? Are they comfortable? I know the AirPods have noise cancelling. Is it any good? Those kind of things. Now, some questions I get are between the discover and learning. So discovering, I would say, is you're encountering this, you're starting. Learning is when you're getting something back. So you're learning something, you're taking information. So you might be learning from a review site. So the discover bit might be identifying review sites. The learning might be reading the reviews. YouTube again, I was looking at DSLR cameras. For some reason, I don't know why I do this, I go straight to YouTube. It is the second most popular search engine. I think that's right. And I look for, I pretty much search top 5 DSLR cameras for video 2020. And that tells me I'm going to get something up to date. I'm going to find the top 5. I'm probably going to go Canon. But that's how I would typically use that. While we're doing this, I'll try and give some kind of expert tips that I've found during my 50 or so design sprints. The most knowledgeable you can be going into this, the better. The point of being the most valuable independent participant is paramount here. The more you have coming into a session like this, the more useful the session is going to be. Why do I say that? Sometimes, whether you've picked the wrong team that you're doing this with, or it's a brand new team and we don't understand enough about maybe customer trends or understanding where the world's going, what's popular, what's happening, is that I assume every team is learning about their area of expertise, learning the industry that they're serving, and learning customers. So the design sprint itself, whether you do a 2-day one or a 5-day one, I am assuming around that you are doing research in the broadest sense. You're actively learning about what this is all about, and you're actively interested. It all comes back to the right people on the bus, which is in good to great, I think. And it's about people having found their purpose and they just love this stuff. You've got to be doing stuff that you love. Otherwise, why are you spending most of your time at work? And if you're still undertaking that challenge, please reach out to me. I'd love to kind of help in a way that I've been in this industry for a decade now. I found my purpose. I'm doing the best work of my life in the best place that I can. If people are still discovering that or they're procrastinating about it, please reach out. I'd love to help you. Georgia, where is the purchase point on this journey? Sure. I would say it's probably just before using, because you've got to, I mean, in the case of the AirPods, you've got to have it and start using it. Around here, I'd suspect, and let's not forget putting some arrows in here. I know we're collaborating and there's 50 people, but let's try. Put some arrows in between. Normally Discover is like the place where most input goes, but do think about using and learning as well. And think from a customer point of view. It may be that Apple have not solved this in the best way possible. I'll give you an example because I'm sharing screen. Okay, apple.com. Okay, so I'm looking to get some AirPods. I've found my colleague wears them. She thinks they're awesome. I'm going to check them out and learn a bit more. Okay. I go to the Apple homepage. I don't know why I type it in. It just seems natural to me. And I'm looking for AirPods. There's a lot of things that aren't AirPods. Oh, here's some AirPods. Okay. And I'm looking at this going, new personal engraving options from A to Emoji. To me, and I'm just one case, I'm going, I don't care about engraving right now. I want to understand whether AirPods are right for me. I believe there's a mixed press. I've talked to a few people. Some say the noise cancelling is great. Some people say it's not worth the money, bearing in mind this is an expensive purchase. Again, from my point of view, I don't want to buy yet. I just want to learn. But it's the only link available. I'm going to click it. And so here's some options. I've heard the AirPods Pro are the noise cancelling ones. For some reason, I have that amount of money. And it's listed the features, but all the next step is to buy. I'm actually not seeing any of the features. Now, I know Apple. I know it's somewhere else on the site. And I know Apple, and I'm guessing here, are probably optimizing their e-commerce journey so that there are fewer exits. You're going to go down the path of actually buying them. No doubt somewhere here, it will say something about returns policy, which starts answering some of my questions about if I do get it, what if I change my mind? I can personalize it. Interestingly, for trends, personalization on products and services is getting more popular. So that's why you'll find vegan shampoos that you can put your name on, but you can also choose the ingredients on. Those are the trends that are coming. I can add to bag, I can pick up. So that's how I can get a hold of it, or I can get it delivered. Here's some information. So they've optimized it so that they can make it easy for people to buy, looking at contrast. This is visual design stuff, but The contrast shows me that this is the most important thing. It's a different color to everything else. And if I'm not clicking add to bag, I'm scrolling and finding out more reasons to buy it, answering some of the questions I have as a purchaser. So it's starting to talk about the noise cancellation, saying it's amazing. And it's given me all the specs so that at the end of reading all this, I understand that actually there is no other option. I've got to buy that. So what was my point? Yeah, so that's why there's always work to do. This is why user testing is so important. And if you're not doing it, you're never going to understand a user point of view on what you should be doing and what you should be improving. Okay, let's go back to the map. Let's see what we're doing. Hey, it's getting a bit busier. Let's start cleaning things up a bit. We've got this, going to that. We've got a question from Jules. I'll just draw that there. In the sprint, I usually take about 45 minutes to 60 minutes doing this activity. It stays there. We can update it as we go, but I find that to be the perfect kind of length of time to get things going. And over time, it can get more kind of more details. Right, Jules, your question is, do you have any tips on persuading stakeholders to do this with you, and who should be involved? Thanks in advance. I get asked how to convince other people a lot, because it is just a symptom of businesses not knowing how to make best decisions as quickly as possible. From my understanding, and a bit of inspiration from Gary Vaynerchuk, making a decision is the most important thing. You never really know if it's right or wrong, but after that decision, you can change that decision with a new one. So this is where a lot of the people understanding how to work and what tools to use in what situations is so important. It's something that Andy Budd actually said to me once when I met him. He said, the skill of a designer or a facilitator within a workshop is not knowing all the tools, but knowing what tool to use at what problem. And I think that skill comes with trying these all out and enabling people to learn and also to fail. When I started doing workshops, I wouldn't tell people what to expect. I think the secret sauce here is to not ask permission. And to be honest, when you're doing a certain role, you shouldn't really have to explain too much about what's going to be encountered. I think it's more important to just start and to help people as you go. So find that 1 hour when you're in a project or you're starting a program of work and say, we've got a problem, here's a tool to start, and we're going to do it together. That will help the organization or the team become more design orientated, more customer orientated. And do you know what? People will start enjoying it, because you will start understanding who is there, who wants to do the best work of their life, and who is just looking at their screen and waiting for the clock to count down to when they can leave. There is a huge engagement issue within businesses right now. The example that I always use, and it's on our landing page at the moment because I just find it so useful. According to the State of the Global Workplace Report in 2018, which is 2 years ago now, 85% of employees are not engaged at work. The economic consequences of this global norm are approximately $7 trillion in lost productivity. There's the answer. So when you are getting questions about, do we need to do this? Oh, Post-its, all you people kind of use them. I would just continue and try and fail and try again and keep on going at it. And if you hit too many times that you're finding barriers, you're finding blockers, then I would take it upon yourself to find yourself a new role in another company. Pure and simple. There is, depending on where you are and what ladder you're climbing, you will find people pushing you down because they don't understand, they don't want to understand, which is probably the most important point. That's why I wouldn't, that's why I now advise, you know, just be the best you can. You've got to have grit and you've got to have resilience. But if you're not winning over the medium term, you've got to find another avenue, because it's just going to push you down and you're going to get real personal problems. Let's try and turn it on a positive note. The teams that do this for the first time do find it quite difficult, but if you keep momentum building, which should be on everyone's agenda, things shouldn't roll into the next week. You shouldn't be asking for more time. Use the time that you've got more effectively. I'll round out this. The teams who are often expert but not customer orientated will often find the most difficult ways to solve problems. And in the worst cases, they are using work as a hobby. And when asked how long something is going to take, and taking from my experience, when a group of engineers were asked how long this piece of technology was going to take, they would say, well, it's going to take 2 years. And I edge on the side of they're solving problems throughout, which, by the way, a design sprint can be used to solve problems at the beginning, and then production gets much easier and quicker. But also they wanted something to do for 2 years. And maybe they weren't the best at what they were doing because they didn't find their purpose. They weren't learning new ways of working or technologies or stretching themselves. They were giving a conservative estimate. That's what I'd say. So let's finish off. So we've got our map. They often look messy. Actually, Mural does a really good job of cleaning it up a bit. And you can start seeing really clear ways of working. Now, to take this on a step, which we won't cover today, but in the design sprint, we will often have how might we questions, which come from a round of either research through lightning talks or through an RC Experts round, where you're talking about the problem space and you're consistently writing on a post-it note or a virtual note, a note-taking method that's consistent with everyone else. That is the how might we, and filling that in and leaving a question mark so you have a question to answer. So what you can then do is start putting those how might we's in the kind of areas. So for example, it might be how might we help users compare other products. And let's do another one. I read Sleeping with Them out of context and then tried to remember what we were talking about. How might we educate? How might we share how to use them easily? So those kind of questions. You could then always add layers, and some teams that I've worked with use a kind of current experience, and then they do a future experience, and then they kind of measure the gap in between. You can also start using, let's try and find a smiley face. Yeah, here we go. So you can start saying, hey, do you know what? We're really good here. People are having a good experience, actually. Let's color this green. So people are really happy here and their experience is going well. And we're not finding any customer complaints, or we're not finding problems. do you know what? When they're learning about this, kind of like what I was doing with the Apple site, do you know what? They're finding problems. They're not finding our product page that beautifully illustrates why AirPods are the best and why they should buy them. And they have a guarantee and they have a returns policy, those kind of things. So there's that. If you've started contributing, that is your first map. And oh, Ivana, how you use arrows correctly. So I go into the drawer here, I click and drag this over, and it's got 2 endpoints here. You can also use copy and paste on the board, and that's really as easy as pie. So let's move over to further reading, and then I will answer any questions. And you can give me feedback. So from Google, there's a user journey map. You can double click on these images and they'll go to a website. So on the With Google website, it looks at the methodology. Each of the activities are kind of explained and it shows you how you can start using them. So in the triple diamonds, which I've now adopted, we do this in phase 1. We do this in the understanding bit, the kind of divergent first part of that triangle. The first one is where we're starting to understand the problem space. After this, we can start refining, start focusing an area on that map and start getting to some decisions and into some outcomes. So that's a good place. Paul Boag wrote about this last March, and he talks about some of the use cases you would use it and how you can get started. Like every tool, there is very little right way of doing it. You just need to start doing it, and over time you'll get better. So I hope over this you've started to uncover a bit of what might have been a bit fuzzy. And there's an audio version of there. So if, like me, you find reading a little tougher, then you can listen to it. Nielsen Norman Group that Don Norman obviously is part of. There's a video explaining customer journey mapping, which is very easy to understand. And yes, this is the waveline that I was talking about. So Nathan Shedroff, it is Shedroff, isn't it? I heard him talk at the Leading Design Conference. And so he talks about this waveline, and you can download the tool, but essentially it's a kind of emotional graph, and it has a few key points. All of this is mapping. This is the whole activity. So you can use it in a very simple way, like we've done today. You can layer it. You can do where we are now, where we want to go, and analyze the gaps. And it is just a fantastic tool. It helps the whole team get a little more user-centered. So coming down to the last 6 minutes, I have an area for questions here. So if you want to write any questions, you can put that there. If you want to write any feedback, I'd love to hear it. You could put it in green. Actually, green's probably a bit of an orange. There we go. So I'll just, while you're putting that down, if you have any questions, I'll answer them as I can. But if you have any feedback, please put that in. What's happening next? So the next few events I'll just talk about. We have a Facebook group, which is never easily, there we go, remote sprints. So if you're not part of the Facebook group, you can find it by just searching remote sprints. It's invite only. I just do a quick check, make sure you're not a bot, and we talk about some of the best practice, some of how to start doing this remotely, which is really the strong suit of this chapter. And ask any questions you want. It's a community. You won't get slammed down if it is moderated by myself. It is supposed to be a place for people to learn, get inspired, and try for themselves. So that is somewhere you can go. The other place, just to sign up to finding out about future events, is our meetup group. Just search for Remote Design Sprint, and we've got the upcoming events listed here. So the next one is in a few weeks' time. We're going to talk about enabling a remote-first culture at work. And the one after that, we're going to do in person. We're going to use the Etch London studio. And in March, we're going to talk about how to launch successful products with limited resources. So link through that, it goes to Eventbrite. And then the next one after that is how to generate better ideas. So we're really going to look at how you can go bolder with your decision-making and not just always go for the safe options. So hope that is super useful. I'm going to answer some questions. If you want any help at all, I am going to share my email address and you can email me there. Let's answer some of these questions. So would you say that Sprint and other workshops are highly customized based on project client needs? Yes, I would. I've predominantly used them for product. You can use them for services. You can use them for operations. You can use them for strategic work. You can use them for HR. HR is a fantastic area to use a sprint. All a sprint is a time-defined period of work with a number of activities. And the whole goal of the Google Sprint Kit, which we've started adopting, is that you pick and choose the activities. You don't have to do all of them. That's why sprints can be 2 days, it can be 4 days, it can be 5 days. It can be any amount of time that you are defining what you're going to do to start with. You're using the skill of a good facilitator and you're getting to outcomes fast. You're discovering, you're deciding, you're using sketching to kind of get a sense of what this all looked like. You can then prototype. Prototype doesn't have to be a product in Figma or Sketch. I've seen a prototype being a meeting scenario. I've seen it be a future press release. I've seen it be robotic. I've seen posters that we've done with teams. Any way to put something out there to then do the final bit, which is validation. Validation is getting answers to the questions that you had at the beginning. Those can be from customers directly, so you can do user testing, you can recruit people that would be similar customers, you can use your current customers, you can use stakeholders if it's an internal strategy, you could even validate with an external expert and just bring them in and say, right, here's the prototype, here's our strategy, can you just look at it? We're going to ask you open-ended questions, we're going to get the point done. Okay, what action should be taken after mapping? After mapping, you'll have a clearer sense of your customer problem space. You would have identified areas of improvement, and that would have then gone to the next stage to say, right, let's sketch some improvements for this area. We understand this. Maybe some things might be out of scope of the sprint that you're working in, so you can put it in the parking lot, you can go in the backlog, but that's what I would do afterwards. Whoever's doing the ticks is super useful, thank you. How much time should you time box mapping in total? I personally do 45 to 60 minutes. That seems to be enough. We've just done it in a very very simple way in 15 minutes. So if you had 3 times the amount of time, you can add some rigor around it. You can question things, you can critique, What stakeholders should be in such a session, roles and purpose on the project? I typically look at the recommended sprint team, and I would suggest that you have a key stakeholder sponsor. That is the kind of product owner of it, or the CEO if you're in that context. You have someone that knows customers, you have someone that knows strategy, you have someone that knows marketing, and you may have a lead developer or engineer. What you could do is invite a customer into either a remote sprint or one in person, and you could ask them what their experience is, or you could survey. So it's very extendable. What's the third diamond? Don't test me. So the diamonds are explained on the Google Design Sprint workshop, but essentially the double diamond's been used in design thinking circles for a number of years. The triple diamond extends that, so you've got a clear understanding and defining, sketching and deciding, prototyping and validating set. Okay, here we go. How do you keep the stakeholders from imposing their own assumptions, or how to present assumptions before the session? I would use an Ask the Experts round. I would time box it at 60 minutes, and I would get them to use a consistent method, like how might we, to note their own opinions or assumptions. I personally find it useful to have a decider within the mix so they can collect and override and lead. I think leaders are important. I know that some sprint contexts, you don't have a decider, it's the group that decides. I personally find a decider to be very, very useful. 45, 60 minutes for all types of users identified or per user identified. Give it a go, just start. I typically use 1 to 3 users to kick off maps, and depending how complex the problem space is, just finding the amount of time. A good experienced facilitator would have an idea of what to do. If you're at all concerned, there's a recommended, I think it's 90 minutes before having a break as a team. So max it to 90 minutes if you want. I've just found 45 to 60 minutes are essential. There is a superpower within momentum and just moving forward. People worry about there's no thinking time. Thinking time is overrated. The best action you can do, and this is what I consult with teams, is to get on and get started. You will find answers if you provide that momentum. And any good examples of chopping out the sprint in smaller workshops? Yes. So I run a couple, but there are a few resources within the design sprint websites, and within tools and templates, there's a few to help inspire you that you can actually make your own based on the kind of ideas and framework. There's a voice sprint. There's a 3-day product design sprint. They're typically for current products that you're looking to improve and problem solve. Otherwise, I'd recommend 4 or 5 days for brand new, kind of the first sprint. And there's a few icebreakers as well, and a few documents. So I'd recommend that. Cool. Is everything else just feedback? Awesome. Great. Obviously, the next few I'm going to lead. I'm looking to mix them up in as soon as possible. The in-person event, we're going to be inviting the head of innovation at Save the Children to share some of the outcomes that they've had through adopting the sprint. And I'll start including more. I'm looking to have a second person talk about a remote first culture at work as well, just to add a bit of variety. Great, thank you so much. The video will be available afterwards. I will share on a email newsletter in the next few days. And I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Thank you for the feedback, and have a great rest of the day and a weekend.